What's up, YouTube? This is Herb Vernacular TV. If you like the content that I'm producing, please like and subscribe to the channel. Today, I want to have a discussion about the Berlin Conference. The first Berlin Conference hosted by German First Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. The first Berlin Conference took place in 1885, 1884, and 1885. And that conference is known from a historical point of view, the conference that have European carve out Africa in their own interest, drew border lines and drew territorial framework that would benefit each European colonies. Recently, there is another conference that we'll have in 2021 called, the Berlin Conference. This one pertaining to Libya and what have happened in Libya since former President Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown and assassinated and killed. So the Berlin Conference, to me, I always see the first Berlin Conference and the second Berlin Conference in the context of outside of foreign powers always controlling the state of African affairs. The first Berlin Conference established on settler on colonialism, colonized the whole continent, and established settler colonialism. The Belgians, the French, the Germans, the Dutch, the Portuguese, all these various international European actors dominated the country within the first framework of the Berlin Conference. Now the second Berlin Conference is being held on Libya. Libya is rich in oil resources. So Libya has been internationalized. The country itself, the conflict in Libya has been internationalized. You got certain faction within Libya that international actors are funding and controlling. You got the Europeans there, you got the Russian interests there, the American interests there, as we know what happened with the overthrow of Gaddafi. Former French President Sarkozy and conspire with the Obama administration to carry on the operation. The U.S. assisted the French in this bombing campaign in Libya and overthrew the regime. But you see, after Gaddafi had been overthrown, you see the result that was left. No matter what you thought about the man, no matter what you thought about his policy, the authoritarian nature of his government, look what has happened to Libya ever since NATO and her allies destroyed that place. Now, Libya is a failed state. It's a fractured state. Different gangs, different factions, all fighting for power. And we have to remember that Libya holds a strategic geostrategic area, and Libya have a lot of oil wealth, oil and gas and natural gas. Part of the reason some people may say that Gaddafi, he was taken out of power because his policy wasn't conducive to outside dominating those industries and wanting to privatize those industries. So the Berlin Conference for me is saying in context to the continent of Africa, even in 2021, continue to be dominated by outside influence, continue to be dominated by outside interests. Look what is going on in Libya. Look what's going on in the Mediterranean. The global south. All the policy that have come from European and Western nations and towards their region have been detrimental to that region. You see what's going on in Syria, in North Africa, the drought, the famine. What's going on in Libya, the migrant trying to cross into Europe. Thousands are dying trying to cross into Europe to seek safe haven. Black people in Libya currently right now being mistreated at an all-time high, documented by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. The private prisons Libya is a ruined state. So these conferences come about because Europeans want to still dominate the affairs of Africa. Uh, 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 the African nations do not come together on a cohesive level to be able to deal with the problems that is going on within the continent. It's always still struggling. It's a struggle. It's a struggle for the direction in which Africa want to go. But Africa is making progress. And Africa is starting to understand in this global capitalism, you got to control your industry. You got to control your means of production. You got to control. Don't let outside capital basically exploit the country. You see that going on in Libya. You see that going on in all parts of Africa. Settler colonization is not fully there intact, but the monetary aspect of colonization is still there. It's still intact. African indebtedness to the European borrowers, to the Asian borrowers. Outside influence continue to dominate the interests of African people. But the first Berlin Conference and the second Berlin Conference basically just let me know, and this is a continual struggle for the younger generation of African people, that African people got to continue to struggle to take back their sovereignty, to take back their independence. The ancestors have fought so long, but here we are in 2021. We still have many leaders. The corruption in Africa is just damaging to the growth of the economies. The corruption, the failed government, the weak government, but this is all by design. These European powers, or the Asian powers, they don't want Africa to come out of the ashes she's in. But it's the younger generation this is left to of African people. They must study the history, see how the whole continent of Africa, how it will divide it, how it will gobble up by Europeans. Those policies is not far gone, even though we are 100 years since 100 and something years since the last Berlin Conference, and now we have another Berlin Conference in 2021 about the affair of our African nation. Why can't and the African nation deal with that problem? But many would say the nations in Africa are not equipped to deal with that. But it's just foreign and outside power trying to dominate the interests of Africa. Africa is rich with natural resources. That's why Belgian King of Leopold, he made billions off the Congo with the Berlin Conference, owning the Congo as his own property. African people got to struggle. African people got to wake up. We have to wake up to this internationalized world, this internationalized system. The younger generation of African children got to study the history to know that you must compete in this capitalist society. But it's the leadership of Africa that we praying the new leadership will come from the youth to carry on the day, to make us understand that outside interests can control and dominate the interests of the nations of Africa. It's time for Africa to rise. It's time for Africa to be put back on the forefront of world civilization. So this is the context in which I see the Berlin Conference, just European meddling in Africans' affair. The French, all those states in Africa that speak French, basically loss of their history. The English, the corruption that the English brought to those nations that her colonial terror or colonial territory that she held, and the corruption that she passed down to the governance, African people got to wake up and take our sovereignty back. Take our autonomy from outside power and dominate our economy.